For 200 years, humans were known as the most peaceful species in the galaxy. They traded with everyone, they shared medicine, food, and technology with many alien worlds. They helped small colonies survive on harsh planets. They repaired damaged ships even if those ships belonged to strangers. Because of this, many alien empires believed something simple. Humans were weak. They believed humans avoided war because they were afraid of it. But the oldest civilizations in the galaxy never believed that story. Those ancient species watched humans very carefully. They had seen something long ago that the younger empires did not know. Humans did not avoid war because they were weak. Humans avoided war because they understood it very well. And when a species truly understands war, it tries very hard not to start one, because it knows how terrible the ending can be. But most of the galaxy did not understand that lesson yet. And soon, they were about to learn it. Far away from the center of human space, there was a small colony world called New Horizon. It was not a rich world. It was not important for politics or military power. It was simply a farming colony. Wide green fields covered most of the planet. Small cities stood between long rivers and golden farms. Families lived quiet lives there. Farmers grew food for nearby star systems. Children went to small schools and played in the open fields. Ships arrived every few weeks to collect supplies, and then the planet returned to silence again. On the morning everything changed. The sky above New Horizon looked perfectly normal. Soft clouds moved slowly over the fields. Farm machines worked between long rows of crops. People were beginning another peaceful day. Then the stars disappeared. Large shadows moved across the sky. 3 enormous warships slowly entered orbit above the planet. Their metal hulls blocked the sunlight like dark mountains in space. The ships belonged to the Krill Dominion. The Krill were known across the galaxy for conquest and cruelty. They believed the universe only respected power. If a civilization looked weak, the Krill attacked it. And from what they had seen, human colonies looked very weak. Inside the largest Krill warship, Commander Vrax studied the planet below. His cold eyes watched the peaceful farms and small cities. "This is the famous human species?" he asked calmly. One of his officers nodded. "Yes, Commander. Humans prefer diplomacy and trade. They rarely fight." Commander Vrax smiled slightly. "Then this will be easy," he said. The Krill fleet sent a message down to the planet. It was short and simple. "Surrender your world and accept Krill rule, or your cities will be destroyed." On the surface of New Horizon, the human governor received the message inside a small command building. People around him waited in silence. Farm leaders, engineers, teachers, and city workers stood together nervously. Everyone looked at the governor, waiting for his decision. The governor read the message slowly. Then he closed his eyes for a moment and sighed. After that, he sent a reply back to the ships above. "We are a peaceful colony. Civilians live here. Please leave our world." The message reached Commander Vrax a few seconds later. He laughed quietly. "They beg for mercy," he said. Then he gave a simple order: "Fire a warning shot." A bright beam of energy shot down from orbit and exploded far outside the main city. The ground shook across the colony. People looked up at the sky in fear. Farms and homes fell silent. Still, the humans sent another message. "Please stop, there are families here." Commander Vrax did not care. "Fire again," he ordered. The second strike destroyed a large storage building near the city. Flames rose into the sky. People ran toward shelters as alarms began to scream across the colony. But the Krill commander still was not satisfied. He wanted the humans to surrender completely. "Prepare full orbital strike," he said coldly. Just before the ships fired again, something unexpected happened. A signal left the planet. It was not a distress call. It was not a request for help. It was a short-coded message sent toward Earth. When the leaders of humanity received that message, every human fleet across the galaxy suddenly stopped what they were doing. Because the message contained only 6 simple words: "New Horizon colony is under attack." For 200 years, humans had tried to keep peace in the galaxy. For 200 years, they avoided war whenever possible. But deep inside humanity's command network, an old system suddenly activated. A system created long ago for one terrible situation. The system had one name, the Guardian Protocol. Within seconds, thousands of hidden human warships began moving through space. Fast, silent and angry, back above New Horizon. Commander Vrax prepared to destroy the colony. He believed the humans were helpless. He believed no one would come to save them. What he did not know was something very important. He had just attacked a peaceful human colony. And across the galaxy, humanity had finally decided peace was over. And the most peaceful species in the galaxy was about to become the most dangerous one. Far away from the quiet farms of New Horizon, deep inside human space, a small control room on Earth suddenly became very busy. For many years the room had been silent. Its screen stayed dark. Its alarms never rang. Most people in the galaxy did not even know this place existed. But on that day, one small message arrived. 6 simple words appeared on the main screen. New Horizon Colony is under attack. For a moment the room stayed completely quiet. Then a red light slowly turned on above the central console. An officer stared at the screen carefully. He read the message twice to be sure. Then he spoke in a calm voice. "Confirm the signal." Another officer checked the data quickly. "It is real," she said. "Source confirmed. New Horizon Colony." The room became silent again. Everyone understood what this meant. This message was not a normal distress call. It was something much more serious. The officer standing near the console took a deep breath. Then he pressed a small metal switch that had not been touched for 200 years. Immediately every screen in the room came alive. Thousands of star maps appeared across the walls. Lines of data moved quickly across the displays. A computer voice spoke calmly through the room. Guardian Protocol activated. Across human space. Something began to change. Hidden stations woke up from long silence. Deep space sensors started scanning the stars. And far beyond normal trade routes, dark shapes began moving through the void. They were human warships. Ships that most of the galaxy had never seen before. Ships that were never shown to alien governments. Ships that humanity built quietly while telling the galaxy they only wanted peace. One of these ships drifted near the edge of an empty star system. Its black hull was almost invisible against the darkness of space. For many years it had remained still, like a sleeping giant. But now its engines slowly came alive, inside the command bridge. A human captain looked at the message on her screen. "New Horizon Colony is under attack." She stood silently for a moment. Then she spoke one short command. "Wake the fleet," all around her ship. Dozens of other dark vessels began to power up. Massive engines started glowing softly in the darkness. A young officer looked at the growing fleet with wide eyes. "Captain," he said quietly, "I thought these ships were only defensive." The captain looked at the stars ahead of them. "They are," she answered calmly. "Today we defend." Within minutes the entire fleet turned toward the same direction. New Horizon, and then they disappeared into faster-than-light travel. Meanwhile, far away above the colony world, the Krill warships continued their attack. Commander Vrax watched the burning city with satisfaction. Fires spread through the outer districts while emergency alarms echoed across the planet. From orbit the colony looked helpless. Small transport ships tried to escape the atmosphere, but the Krill fleet destroyed them easily. One officer approached Vrax with new information. "Commander, we have detected a transmission from the planet." Vrax smiled slightly. "A surrender message?" he asked. The officer shook his head. "No, Commander. It appears to be a signal sent outside the system." Vrax did not look worried. "To whom?" he asked. The officer checked the data again. The signal was sent toward Earth. For a moment, the command bridge became quiet. Then Vrax laughed loudly. "So the humans asked for help," he said. "How long will it take their ships to arrive?" The officer answered carefully. "Based on human fleet speed, maybe several days." Vrax nodded with confidence. "Good," he said. "Then we have plenty of time." He turned back to the planet below. "Prepare the final strike." But just as the Krill fleet began charging their weapons, something strange appeared on their sensors. At first it looked like a small disturbance in space. Then the disturbance grew larger. One of the sensor officers suddenly spoke with confusion in his voice. "Commander, we are detecting multiple warp signatures." Vrax frowned slightly. "How many ships?" he asked. The officer stared at the screen. His voice became nervous. "At least 50. Another officer interrupted quickly. "Commander, more signatures appearing." The numbers kept increasing on the screen. 70 ships, 90 ships, 100 ships. And they were arriving much faster than expected. Commander Vrax's confident smile slowly disappeared. "That is impossible," he said quietly. "Human fleets cannot travel that fast." But space itself suddenly began to tear open above New Horizon. Bright flashes of light appeared across the darkness. One after another, massive human warships entered the system. Their shapes were enormous, their weapons glowing with cold blue energy. Within seconds, the sky above the colony was filled with hundreds of human vessels, all of them silent, all of them pointing directly at the Krill fleet. Inside the human flagship, the captain looked calmly at the enemy ships. Then she gave a simple order: "Open a communication channel." A message immediately reached Commander Vrax's bridge. The screen showed the human captain's calm face. Her voice was quiet, but every word sounded heavy. "You attacked a peaceful human colony," she said. "You were warned." Commander Vrax stared at the massive fleet surrounding him. For the first time since the invasion began, he felt something unfamiliar: fear. Because he was finally starting to understand the truth. The galaxy's most peaceful species had just arrived. And they were not here to negotiate. They were here to end the war he had just started. The arrival of the human fleet changed everything above New Horizon. Only minutes earlier, the Krill commander believed victory was certain. Now hundreds of unknown warships surrounded his fleet in complete silence. Commander Vrax stared at the main screen of his command bridge. The human ships were larger than expected. Their dark hulls looked smooth and strange. No visible weapons, no large cannons, no missile ports. They looked almost peaceful, but every sensor on the Krill warship was screaming warnings. Energy readings from the human ships were extremely high, higher than anything the Krill Dominion had ever seen before. One nervous officer spoke carefully. "Commander, our scanners cannot fully analyze their weapons." Another officer added quickly. "Energy levels are rising across the entire human fleet." Commander Vrax forced himself to stay calm. "They are trying to scare us," he said. "Humans are diplomats, not warriors, but deep inside." He was beginning to feel something was wrong, because the humans were not shouting threats. They were not sending angry messages. They were simply waiting. The silence felt heavy across the battlefield. Finally, the human captain appeared again on the communication screen. Her voice was steady and calm. "This is your final warning," she said. "You attacked a peaceful colony. You will now leave this system immediately. For the safety of your crews, retreat now." Commander Vrax leaned closer to the screen, his eyes filled with cold anger. "You threatened the Krill Dominion?" he asked. "You hide behind diplomacy for centuries, and now you show weapons?" The human captain answered quietly. "We warned the galaxy many times. We wanted peace. But you chose violence." The screen went dark. Commander Vrax slammed his hand against the command console. "They are bluffing," he said loudly. "All ships prepare to fire." Across the Krill fleet, massive weapon systems powered up. Energy cannons began glowing with red light. Missile bays opened across the warships. Thousands of weapons locked onto the human fleet. One of Vrax's officers spoke nervously. "Commander, the humans are still not moving." Vrax smiled again, trying to regain his confidence. "Because they are afraid," he said. "Fire." The darkness of space suddenly exploded with light. Hundreds of red energy beams shot across the void. Thousands of missiles rushed toward the human fleet. For a moment it looked like the attack would destroy everything, but then something impossible happened. The human ships did not dodge, they did not raise shields, they did not even move. Instead, a strange blue wave spread across the human fleet. The wave expanded outward like a quiet storm in space. And when the Krill weapons reached it, they simply disappeared. Missiles dissolved into bright sparks. Energy beams vanished like smoke in the wind. Every attack was erased before it could reach the ships. Silence returned to the battlefield again. Commander Vrax stared at the sensors in disbelief. What happened? He demanded. One officer answered with a shaking voice. Our weapons. They were neutralized. Another officer whispered quietly. Commander, that was not a shield. Then what was it? Vrax asked angrily. The officer hesitated before answering. It appears to be a field that cancels energy itself. The commander felt a cold feeling in his chest. Technology like that should not exist. The human fleet had not defended itself. It had simply erased the attack completely. And then something even worse happened. Across the dark human warships, new lights slowly appeared. Lines of blue energy moved across their hulls. Power levels rose rapidly. One Krill officer shouted suddenly, Commander, we are detecting weapon systems activating, but we still cannot identify them. Vrax looked at the growing human fleet with fear growing inside him. For the first time he realized something terrifying. The humans had never shown their real military power to the galaxy. Everything everyone knew about them might have been wrong. Inside the human flagship, the captain watched the Krill ships quietly. Her officers waited for the order. A young officer finally spoke. Captain, enemy fleet has attacked civilian targets and refused retreat. She nodded slowly. Then the protocol is clear, she said. She looked at the burning colony far below them. Then she gave the command. Disable their fleet. Across the human armada, weapons fired for the first time. But the attacks looked nothing like normal weapons. No missiles, no beams. Instead, small points of blue light appeared near each Krill warship. Tiny glowing spheres floating silently in space. For a moment nothing happened. Then every Krill warship suddenly lost power. Engines stopped, weapons shut down, shields collapsed instantly. The giant ships became helpless metal giants drifting in space. The entire Krill fleet had been disabled in less than 10 seconds. Commander Vrax stared at the dark screens around him in horror. All systems offline. One officer said quietly, We cannot move, another whispered. The human fleet had not destroyed them. They had simply taken control of the battlefield completely. And that was when Vrax realized the truth. Humans had not arrived to fight a war. They had arrived to end it instantly. But far away across the galaxy, something even more dangerous was already beginning. Because the Krill Dominion was about to learn that attacking one human colony had just awakened something much larger than a single fleet. Humanity itself. Above New Horizon, the battlefield had become strangely quiet again. Only a few minutes earlier, the Krill fleet believed they were about to destroy a peaceful human colony. Now their warships floated helplessly in space. Every engine was silent. Every weapon was dead. Hundreds of Krill soldiers inside those ships stared at dark control panels that no longer responded. Commander Vrax stood in the center of his command bridge. For the first time in his long military career, he had no idea what to do next. His powerful fleet had been defeated in less than 10 seconds, and the humans had not even destroyed a single ship. They had simply turned everything off. Outside the window of his bridge, the massive human fleet surrounded them quietly. Dark ships floating like silent guardians in space. No celebration, no threats, no insults, just calm control of the entire battlefield. A communication signal suddenly appeared on the Krill command screen. The human captain returned, her expression serious but not angry. Commander Vrax, she said calmly, your fleet has been disabled. The battle is over. You will power down your remaining systems and prepare to surrender. Vrax stared at the screen with burning anger. You think this is victory? He replied, You stopped one fleet. The Krill Dominion has thousands more. The human captain did not react. She simply listened quietly. Vrax continued speaking, his voice full of pride. You attacked soldiers of the Dominion. Our empire will respond. Your colonies will burn across the galaxy. For a moment the human captain said nothing. Then she answered in a quiet voice. That is exactly what we are trying to prevent. Vrax laughed loudly. You should have thought about that before attacking us, he said. The human captain shook her head slightly. No, Commander, she said softly. You attacked us first. The moment your fleet fired on a civilian world, the situation changed. Vrax leaned forward, anger still strong in his eyes. Then destroy us, he said. Show the galaxy what your peaceful species really is. For several seconds, the human captain remained silent. Finally, she spoke again. We will not destroy your fleet, she said. Your crews will be taken into custody and returned after negotiations. We do not want this war. Vrax could not believe what he was hearing. You still talk about peace? He asked. You already defeated us. The captain looked directly at him. Yes, she said. And that is why we are giving you a chance to stop this. Then the screen went dark again. For a moment the Krill bridge remained silent. One officer finally spoke with concern. Commander, what if the humans are telling the truth? Vrax turned sharply toward him. Truth? He repeated. They humiliated our fleet. If we retreat now, the entire galaxy will see weakness. He walked toward the main command console slowly. No, he said firmly. The Dominion will respond. Far away from New Horizon, deep inside Krill territory, a massive fortress station floated above a burning red star. Inside the station, high leaders of the Krill Dominion were already receiving reports from the battlefield. An officer finished explaining the situation. Our fleet has been disabled, but not destroyed, he said carefully. The human forces are offering negotiations. The great war leader of the Dominion sat silently on his throne. His heavy armor reflected the red light of the star outside. Negotiations? He asked slowly. Yes, my lord, the officer answered. They claim they want peace. The war leader stood up slowly. His eyes burned with anger. They defeat our fleet and then offer peace? He said, that is an insult. He turned toward a large star map showing human space. We will answer this insult properly, he continued. Prepare the First Dominion Armada. The officers in the room suddenly became nervous, because everyone knew what that order meant. The First Dominion Armada was the largest battle fleet the Krill had ever built. Thousands of warships, planet destroyers, heavy siege carriers. Enough firepower to erase entire civilizations. One officer spoke carefully. My lord, intelligence reports say human technology may be more advanced than expected. The war leader smiled coldly. Then we will bring more ships, he said. And when their colonies burn, the galaxy will remember who truly rules it. Back above New Horizon, the human fleet quietly continued rescue operations on the damaged colony. Medical ships moved toward the surface. Supply vessels began helping civilians. The battle seemed finished. But inside the human flagship, the captain was watching new information arriving from deep space. A young officer suddenly looked up from his console. Captain, he said quietly, we are detecting massive Krill fleet movements. How many ships? She asked. The officer hesitated before answering. Thousands. The bridge became silent. Everyone understood what this meant. The Krill Dominion had chosen war. The captain looked once more at the damaged colony below them. Then she spoke calmly. Send a message to Earth Command. The officer nodded. What should it say? The captain looked at the star map slowly. Then she answered with a quiet voice. Tell them the warning failed, and the Dominion Armada is coming. Far across the galaxy, humanity was about to make a decision it had avoided for 2 centuries. Because if the Krill Armada truly came to war, then the galaxy would finally see something it had never seen before. The full power of the most peaceful species in the universe. The news from New Horizons spread across the galaxy faster than anyone expected. Within hours, many alien governments learned that a Krill fleet had attacked a peaceful human colony. They also learned something even more surprising. The entire Krill fleet had been defeated in seconds. Not destroyed, not damaged, simply turned off. For most civilizations, this news was impossible to believe. Because humans were known for diplomacy, trade, and cooperation, not overwhelming military power. Many leaders assumed the story must be exaggerated. But the oldest races in the galaxy reacted very differently. When they heard the report, they became very quiet, because they remembered something others had forgotten. Long ago, when humanity first joined the galactic community, they had made a simple promise. "We prefer peace," humans had said. "We will always choose diplomacy first." But hidden inside those words was something many species failed to notice. Humans never promised they were weak. They only promised they would try to avoid war. And now that promise was beginning to break. Meanwhile, deep inside Krill territory, the Dominion Armada was preparing for battle. Thousands of warships gathered near the massive fortress station orbiting the Red Star. The Armada stretched across space like a giant metal storm. Heavy carriers, destroyers, siege cruisers, and planet killers formed endless lines of warships. At the center of this enormous force stood the flagship of the Dominion war leader. Inside its command chamber, the leader watched the growing fleet with satisfaction. "This will end quickly," he said confidently. "Humans embarrassed one of our fleets, so we will erase their species." One of his advisors spoke carefully. "My lord, intelligence reports say the human response fleet was extremely advanced." The war leader did not look concerned. "Every species appears powerful when fighting a small battle," he said, "but no one can defeat the full Dominion Armada." He turned toward the officers in the chamber. "Set course for human space," he ordered. Thousands of engines roared to life across the Armada. Moments later, the enormous fleet jumped into faster-than-light travel. Their destination was Clear Earth. But while the Dominion Armada raced toward human territory, something else was happening across the galaxy. On quiet asteroids, hidden stations began activating. Deep inside empty star systems, strange structures slowly woke from long silence. On distant moons and forgotten planets, giant metal doors opened for the first time in centuries. From those hidden places, ships began to emerge. They were larger than the fleet that defended New Horizon, much larger. These vessels were not defensive patrol ships. They were true warships, massive carriers, heavy dreadnoughts, and strange ships built for purposes no alien engineer could understand. Across the galaxy, hundreds of secret human shipyards suddenly came alive, and the fleets they had hidden for generations were finally leaving their hiding places. Inside Earth's main command center, leaders of humanity watched the growing situation carefully. A giant star map filled the wall of the command room. Small lights appeared across the map as new fleets activated. One officer looked at the numbers in disbelief. "Admiral," he said slowly, "total mobilization has reached 70%. The human admiral standing in the center of the room nodded quietly. "Continue activation," he said. Another officer asked the question everyone was thinking. "Sir, do we really have this many ships?" The admiral allowed himself a small smile. For 200 years, the galaxy believed humans were only traders and diplomats. He said, "While they believed that, we prepared for the day peace might fail." He looked again at the star map where hundreds of fleets were now moving toward human space. "We hoped this day would never come," he added quietly, "but we were ready if it did." Far away near the edge of human territory, the first human war fleets were already taking position. Thousands of ships formed defensive lines between the Dominion Armada and the inner human systems. Among them were vessels unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen before. Ships so large they looked like moving cities, their weapons glowing with powerful blue energy. Silent guardians waiting for the approaching storm. Meanwhile, the Dominion Armada continued racing toward human space. Confident, powerful, unstoppable, inside the Dominion flagship, the war leader stood before a large window, watching the stars stretch into long white lines during faster-than-light travel. Soon they would reach human territory. Soon they would crush the species that dared to challenge the Dominion. He turned toward his officers with a confident smile. "Prepare the invasion fleets," he said proudly. "We will teach the galaxy why no one challenges the Krill Dominion." But at that exact moment, far ahead of the Dominion Armada, thousands of human warships finished forming their defensive lines. A massive wall of steel and energy stretching across space. The admiral of the human fleets looked at the approaching enemy forces on his screen. The Dominion Armada was enormous, one of the largest military forces ever assembled. But the admiral did not look worried. Instead, he spoke calmly to the officers around him. "Send a message to the Krill commander," he ordered. Moments later, the message raced through space toward the approaching armada. A single sentence written in clear human language: "You were warned. Turn back now." But deep inside human command systems, another message had already been prepared. One that would only be sent if the Dominion refused to listen. A message that would tell every human fleet in the galaxy the same thing. The time for peace was finally over. The Krill Dominion Armada moved through hyperspace like a living storm. Thousands of warships stretched across the void, engines burning with aggressive energy. Inside their formation, commanders spoke with confidence. They believed nothing could stop them. They believed humanity was still the same peaceful species that avoided conflict. But ahead of them, space was no longer empty. A massive wall of human ships waited in silence. Not scattered, not unorganized, but perfectly formed into battle lines that stretched across star systems. It looked less like a fleet and more like a constructed barrier between war and peace. Inside the Krill flagship, alarms suddenly activated. A tactical officer spoke in shock. "Commander, we have reached human defensive perimeter." The war leader stepped forward slowly. "Engage them," he ordered without hesitation. The Krill fleet opened fire immediately. Thousands of energy beams lit up space. Missiles launched in endless waves. Entire sectors of space turned bright with weapon fire. For a moment, it looked like the human fleet would be erased under the attack. But the human response was different from anything the Krill had ever seen. No panic, no retreat, no defensive formation changes. Instead, the human ships simply activated something. A quiet pulse spread through their formation. A deep blue wave expanded outward across the battlefield, and when the Krill weapons reached it, they vanished. Missiles disappeared mid-flight. Energy beams dissolved into nothing. Even explosions never formed. It was as if space itself was refusing to allow violence. Inside the Krill command bridge, confusion turned into fear. "Our weapons are not reaching them," one officer said quickly. "Recalculate targeting systems." Another shouted, but nothing changed. Every attack was being erased before impact. The war leader stared at the display in silence. For the first time, his confidence cracked slightly. "What kind of technology is this?" he asked. No one answered, because no known civilization had ever displayed anything like it. On the human flagship, the admiral watched the battlefield calmly. His officers waited for the order to escalate, but he did not speak for several seconds. Instead, he studied the Krill fleet carefully. Then he finally said, "They are still testing us." One officer asked, "Sir, should we respond with full force?" The admiral shook his head slightly. "Not yet," he replied. "Activate Echo Line immediately." Something changed across the human fleet. Ships that had remained silent until now began shifting position. Hidden sections of their hulls opened, revealing weapons that had never been seen by any alien species before. Long-range arrays that bent light itself, energy cores that warped space around them, and systems that did not match any known military design in the galaxy. A young Krill officer watched the readings in disbelief. "Commander, those are not normal weapons," he whispered. The war leader turned sharply. "Then what are they?" Before anyone could answer, the human fleet did something unexpected. They did not fire. Instead, they sent a signal. A massive pulse of structured energy spread across the battlefield. It entered every Krill ship at once, and suddenly, all Krill communication systems went silent. Every channel, every command link, every coordination network gone. The entire Dominion Armada was now isolated. Unable to communicate, unable to coordinate, unable to respond. Panic began spreading through Krill crews on thousands of ships. Soldiers shouted orders that could not be transmitted. Officers tried to reconnect systems that refused to respond. It was chaos inside one of the most powerful fleets in the galaxy. And still, the human ships had not fired a single weapon. Inside the Krill flagship, the war leader realized something terrifying. "This is not a battle," he said slowly. "This is control." On the human flagship, the admiral finally stood up. He looked at the enemy fleet one last time. Then he gave the order that had been waiting for 2 centuries. "Begin containment protocol across the human fleet." Systems activated in perfect synchronization. Massive energy fields expanded outward like invisible walls. The Krill ship suddenly found themselves unable to move forward or retreat. Their engines still worked, but space itself resisted their movement. It was as if the battlefield had been redesigned around them. A young officer whispered, "We are not destroying them. We are trapping them." The admiral nodded. "We are ending the war without ending their lives." But deep inside Krill territory, something far worse was being prepared, because the Dominion had just realized they were not fighting a normal enemy. They were fighting a civilization that had studied war for centuries and built something the galaxy had never been ready to see. A perfect balance between peace and power. And now, with the Dominion Armada trapped and isolated, humanity was ready to reveal the final truth, the secret they had kept hidden from the galaxy for generations. The reason they had always said they preferred peace, because peace was not their weakness. It was their choice, and choices, once broken, always have consequences. The Krill Dominion Armada was no longer an army. It was a trapped shadow drifting inside a cage built from space itself. Thousands of massive warships floated helplessly between invisible human containment fields. Engines still active, weapons still charged, but nothing worked the way it should. Every attempt to move forward failed. Every command to retreat was blocked. Even communication between ships was completely silent. Inside the Krill flagship, the war leader stood frozen in disbelief. For the first time in his life, he was not in control of anything. His empire had prepared for centuries of conquest, yet it had been stopped without a single ship being destroyed. A young officer finally spoke in a shaky voice. "Commander, we are completely surrounded." The war leader did not answer immediately. He slowly walked toward the main viewing window. Outside, the human fleet was still calm, still silent, still perfectly organized. Not one ship was firing. Not one ship was showing anger or chaos. It was like facing a civilization that had already finished the war before it began. On the human flagship, the admiral stood with his hands behind his back. He watched the trapped Krill Armada carefully, then he spoke in a calm voice. "Open a final channel." The communication officer hesitated. "Sir, do you want surrender terms?" The admiral shook his head slightly. "No," he said. "I want them to understand." A signal was sent across the battlefield. The Krill war leader appeared once again on the human screen. His expression was no longer confident. It was controlled, but tense. "What is this?" he demanded. "You have not destroyed us. You have not attacked us properly. What do you want?" The human admiral looked directly at him. His voice was calm, almost quiet. "We want you to leave," he said. "That is all we ever wanted." The war leader laughed bitterly. "You cripple our greatest armada and still speak of peace?" The admiral nodded slowly. "Yes," he replied, "because we never wanted war." There was a long silence across both fleets. Then the admiral continued. "You attacked a peaceful colony. You believed we were weak because we did not respond with violence. But you misunderstood something very important about us." The war leader narrowed his eyes. "And what is that?" he asked. The admiral answered clearly. "We are not peaceful because we cannot fight. We are peaceful because we choose not to." The silence deepened. Even Krill officers listening in the background stopped moving. The admiral turned slightly, gesturing toward the vast human fleet behind him. "For 200 years, we studied every war in galactic history," he said. "Every empire that fell, every civilization that destroyed itself. And we learned one thing." The war leader watched carefully. "What thing?" he asked. The admiral replied softly. "War is easy to start, but impossible to control." He stepped closer to the console. "That is why we built systems like this." The screen changed, showing hidden fleets across the galaxy, massive human warships and systems no alien had ever mapped. Entire armadas in silent orbit around forgotten stars. The Krill officers watched in shock, because the fleet at New Horizon was only a fraction of what humanity actually had. The admiral continued. "We never showed these ships," he said, "because we never wanted anyone to fear us. But you forced our hand. The war leader finally spoke in a lower voice. "If you had all this power, why wait?" The admiral looked at him for a long moment, then answered simply, "Because we hoped the galaxy would never give us a reason." A long silence followed. No one in either fleet spoke. Then the admiral gave his final message. "This is not destruction," he said. "This is containment. Your fleet will be released when your government agrees to peace terms." The war leader clenched his fists. "You are imprisoning a Dominion armada," he said angrily. The admiral nodded calmly. "Yes," he replied, "because you came here to destroy a peaceful world, and we came here to stop you." Another silence followed. This time longer, heavier. The war leader looked around at his silent fleet. Thousands of ships, once symbols of unstoppable power, now frozen and useless. For the first time, he understood something he had never considered before. Power was not always about destruction. Sometimes it was about control, restraint, and patience. Finally, he spoke quietly. "What happens now?" The admiral answered, "Now your empire learns what peace actually means." The connection ended. Across space, the containment fields slowly stabilized. Human fleets began standing down, but they did not leave. They remained as guardians, not conquerors. A new horizon below. Fires were being extinguished. Civilians were being rescued. Life was slowly returning to normal. But in the wider galaxy, everything had changed forever. The Krill Dominion had learned a truth they would never forget. The most dangerous species in the galaxy was not the one that wanted war. It was the one that had mastered it, understood it, and still chose peace. And now the galaxy finally understood the warning that had been ignored for centuries. When humanity says they want peace, they are not asking, they are choosing. And when that choice is broken, the galaxy itself learns what happens next, not extinction. Not destruction, but control, absolute, silent, and complete. Because the galaxy's most dangerous species was never the strongest. It was the one that could end everything, and still choose not to.